Right. So, in the last session, we have discussed about the difference between the cadence as well as synchronization. So, how it is different from cadence and synchronization, the differences we have discussed. At the same time, we have discussed even two major points under both cadence and as well as synchronization here. Wherein the third point under cadence is to support regular planning and cross-functional coordination. Because this is the one where there is a constant planning of work, whatever we were performing or whatever we were about to develop should be delivered effectively. This is something essentially required because the transformation of the requirements might be changed in a different level. So hence, team has to understand the real requirement and how this changes and all everything happens, so that regular planning towards the work what they are supposed to deliver will be of different. So regular planning is what is needed because there will be some uncertainty of tasks which has to be addressed in middle of the work what we are performing. So that it's always essentially important for us to have a regular planning of the activities, what is that we are performing, that is something is needed. At the same time, cross-functional coordination, because in the yesterday session, we have discussed about cross-functional teams on that. Cross-functional coordination of understanding both technicalities and as well as what we call it, technicalities and as well as the functional aspects of a business is what one should understand. So that is something majorly important when we are working on this. So when we talk about this cadences part, in this cadences, we support regular planning of the activities, what is that team has to perform. Followed by this, whatever the cross-functional coordination which is required among the teams is what generally we support under cadence part. But whereas when it comes to the synchronization part, it provides routine dependency management because multiple events we are performing, multiple teams are involving in one and another. So it is always better for us to understand about the kind of dependencies among the groups who are essentially working on a particular solution to be provided. So there is a dependency management which has to be created among the cultural cross-functional teams. Either it could be a business team or a technical team. There is always a dependency management which has to be created so that we don't see any confusion or the complexity of working on solution, working towards the direction of the solution should not get disturbed. So for that, we need to provide a dependency management process, which normally we do. Now, when we talk about the cadence part, the other point is that limited batch size to a single interval, where of course, like whatever the batch size are we implementing, especially on agile environment, even in connect to the scaled agile itself, even the batch size must be limited in percentage in size, right? So it should not be more than the limited, right? So this is what generally the limiting the batch size is all about. At the same time, in reference to the synchronization part, it provides a full system and integration and assessment where multiple teams and multiple events we are performing, wherein we are facilitating both functional and as well as technical teams we are integrating. So it is always important for us to support full system and integration assessments, which is essentially needed. Now, when we talk about the cadences part, it controls injection of new work, means if there is any kind of unpredictability of work which will come in between, so that has to be controlled. That's the reason why continuous process flow is what we have created, right? So without having any kind of difficulties, right? So that's what generally cadences process engine and practice is majorly focused on. So it controls injection of new work where we have to make sure whatever the new work are we addressing or the one which we are addressing should be an integral part of the existing events, what is that we are performing or the activities what we are performing. It should be within that limits. It should not cross over that, right? So because it may leads to the complexity of the work, what is that we are performing. So in order to control that, this cadences usually controls the injection of new work. Whatever is planned, so within that limits, by understanding the unpredictable tasks to be completed, so everything can be streamlined in this cadence itself. When we talk about synchronization, it provides multiple feedback perspectives. Of course, feedbacks for ourselves is required to have a quality deliverables in future, which we want to provide. So for that, we require us to provide multiple feedback perspectives and all everything. It comes in reference to the synchronization part itself. Followed by this, cadence has a facility where it provides schedule integration points. Means integration points means either this integration may be business with technical integration, because the business goal or a business agility, what is that we have identified or seen, that has to be integrated with the technical solution. That is where generally the result, what is that they were expecting driving towards the solution will become much successful. So that it is always better and important for us to understand and as well as provide schedule integration points, which are part of this cadence. So this is how usually the differentiation we see between cadence to synchronization. Is it clear, Sridhar? Right. This is
Yes,
what.
yes.
Now, when we talk about the principles of flow in reference to the cadence, because we have to be focused more on the part of the cadence. After that, we need to focus more on the part of the synchronization. So, wherein in regard to that, please write on the points. Principles of flow in reference to cadence. First point, principles of flow in reference to cadence are as follows. First, let's discuss about cadence, and then we get into the synchronization. Okay, clear? So principles of flow in reference to cadence. Use a first point, because for this, how this scaled agile practices we are addressing about this flow, that will be discussed parallel. Okay, you can write down the points in connect to the safe practices what we have to follow. Okay, first point under the principal flow: use a regular cadence to limit. Use a regular cadence to limit the accumulation of variance. Use a regular cadence of limit the accumulation of variance. The first principal flow under cadence is to provide and as well as use a cadence to limit the accumulation of variations, because we have to limit the accumulation part without having much difficulty on it. So we need to limit the accumulations part, because not to accumulate more heavy. So the accumulation of the what is that we are performing should be within that limit itself, right? So this is what the first principal flow, which is something relating to cadence. Now, how are we going to address this in safe practices? Because this is the flow of cadence we have taken, and how this can be applied to safe practices, because using safe practices, how are we addressing this issue is what we need to know. Because end of the day, unless until if you don't know that, then there will be of no point in understanding about the cadences. Now,
Yes.
this is to address, so in continuation to that, you can write down in connect to, right? For this point, in connect to safe practices means which is in connect to the point what I have mentioned so far. In connect to that, what safe practices are we following for this, right? That's what my question, my point, which I'm going to address you. In connect to this, safe practices are concerned. We plan, we plan, regular PI interval limits. We plan regular PI interval limits, which must be limited, which must be limited which must be limited to a single PI time box, which must be limited to a single PI time box. This is possible. This is possible by increasing the, this is possible by increasing the agile release time, increasing the agile release time and solution time predictability. Agile release time and solution time predictability. Is it done? Right?
Yes, that's better.
Right. So the second point. Provide sufficient capacity margins, provide sufficient capacity margins to enable cadence. To enable cadence. This is in connect to safe practices. How are we addressing safe practices for this? First point. In this safe practices.
Okay.
To meet this or to address this, whatever the word you can. So to meet this or to address this.
Okay.
Understanding PI objectives. Understanding PI objectives. Followed by innovation and planning. innovation and planning. Is what is required. So what is art, right? So all these things that we are going to discuss, because maybe in 1 or 2 days this will be done. So then we'll get into art, so that the detailed about this agile release train, all that stuff. Right? So the detailing part you'll be knowing there. Okay, Sridhar, clear?
Okay, Raj, got it.
Because here we are showing the differences, but we are not going detailed part, right? So there we'll go. So because we are confining now to the principles, maybe in one more principle will left over. But is then we'll get into art, so that you'll be knowing that part detailed there. Okay,
Got it.
understood?
Yeah, understood.
Right. So PA objectives as well as innovative PA planning should have a
Sorry, this is under the same point.
under the same point. There is no stop under the same point. Should have a planned scope, and it should provide a scheduled margin, and it should provide a schedule margin. And it provide a schedule margin. Third point, Sridhar.
Yeah.
Under
Sorry,
the
Raj, I
flow.
got confused. Sorry, I got confused. Which I thought this is the second point. Actually, no.
Yeah, second
First
point only. This is all second point. Third point I'm coming on. I have not yet started.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. This is okay. Second
This is
point
all,
about
whatever I have discussed with you some time back is completely the second one, in reference to the
Second point.
safe practices. Yes.
Because you said point number 1 and second, so I wrote it like that.
Yeah. First point is like let me explain. So first point is limit of accumulation and variations, right? So for that,
Yeah.
increasing release train and solution train predictability are the safe practices we follow. This is first point.
First point.
Second point, provide sufficient capacity margin to enable cadence. So for that, whatever the PI objectives, at the same time, innovation and PI planning, right? So all these things comes under the second point, right? All these things. Now,
Okay.
third point. Use cadence to make waiting time predictable. Use cadence to make waiting time predictable. Right? Cadence to make waiting time predictable. This is the point. In this, to address this scaled practices, let us assume in the safe practices I'm giving, let us assume the prescribed features or the decided features which are not into PI, but remains as a high priority but remains as a high priority. In this context, delivery can be scheduled. Delivery can be scheduled delivery can be scheduled in the following PI. In the following PI,
Okay.
right? So this avoids because of this, because whenever we are scheduling this to the next PI, so the major advantage here is that this avoids the temptation of load excess work, the temptation of load excess work, which is in the current increment, which is in the current increment. Done, Sridhar?
Done.
This is the third point. Fourth point. No, fourth point in the case cadence flow. Right? Fourth point. Use a regular cadence. Use a regular cadence to enable small batch sizes. To enable small batch sizes. To enable small batch sizes. To address this, in scaled agile, to address this in scaled agile, developing short iterations, developing short iterations developing short iterations will be helpful. Developing short iterations will be helpful in controlling the number of stories in the iteration. Number of stories in the iteration. Along with that, batch sizes are also controlled. Batch sizes are also controlled by short PIs. Controlled by short PIs. And frequent releases. Provide high system predictability. And throughput. High system predictability and throughput.